My boss told me I didn't deserve a vacation. Then he sent the entire office on a trip, even the new hires. I didn't say a word. I just sent one file. 6 hours later, he was calling in a panic. Before we continue, please write in the comments where you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly in the open-plan office, casting a sterile glow over the rows of cubicles. Clara sat at her desk, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, her eyes fixed on the email that had just popped up on her screen. The subject line was innocuous enough. Company-wide announcement, team-building retreat. But as she read the first few lines, her stomach twisted into a knot. "Dear team," it began, "I'm thrilled to announce that, as a reward for your hard work, the entire office has been invited to an all-expenses-paid retreat in the Bahamas next month. This is a chance to unwind, bond, and celebrate our successes. Details to follow. Best, Richard." Clara's jaw tightened. Richard, her boss, the man who, just yesterday, had leaned back in his leather chair, his arms crossed, and told her with a smirk, "Clara, you don't deserve a vacation. You haven't proven yourself enough this quarter." The words had stung, sharp and cold, like a slap she hadn't seen coming. She'd worked at Pinnacle Marketing for 3 years, pulling late nights, exceeding targets, and mentoring new hires. Yet somehow, she didn't deserve a break. And now, this email. The entire office was invited to a tropical paradise. Even the new hires, some of whom had been there less than a month. She scrolled through the email thread, her eyes scanning the excited replies from her colleagues. "Can't wait," wrote Emily, who'd started 2 weeks ago. "This is unreal," chimed in Jake, the intern who still didn't know how to use the copier. Clara's fingers curled into fists. She wasn't included. She knew it without even checking the recipient list. Richard had made it clear. She was to stay behind, manning the office alone while everyone else sipped cocktails on a beach. Clara leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She wasn't the type to cry or throw a tantrum. No, Clara was methodical. She was the one who fixed problems, who found solutions when campaigns tanked or clients got difficult. And right now, Richard had just handed her a problem to solve. A personal one. Her gaze drifted to her computer screen, to a folder buried deep in her drive labeled *Project Archives*. Inside, it was a file she'd almost forgotten about. A file she'd stumbled across months ago while cleaning up the company's chaotic server. It was a spreadsheet, unassuming at first glance, but its contents were anything but. Names, dates, numbers, transactions that didn't add up, emails that were never meant to see the light of day. Clara hadn't done anything with it at the time. She'd told herself it wasn't her business. But now it was personal. She glanced around the office. Her colleagues were buzzing with excitement, already planning their packing lists and joking about sunscreen. No one noticed her, the quiet workhorse in the corner. No one ever did. But that was about to change. Clara's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. She opened the folder, clicked on the file, and hit Compose Email. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, typing a single line in the subject. "For your review." She attached the file, entered an email address, one she'd memorized from a business card months ago, and paused. Her cursor hovered over the *send button. This wasn't about revenge, she told herself. It was about justice. Richard had underestimated her for too long. He thought he could humiliate her, exclude her, and get away with it. But Clara had always been good at playing the long game. She clicked *send*. The soft whoosh of the email leaving her outbox felt like the first crack in a dam. She leaned back, her heart pounding, and waited. She didn't know exactly what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure. Richard's perfect little world was about to unravel. 6 hours later, her phone rang. The screen lit up with his name. Clara let the phone ring 3 times before picking it up. She wasn't in a hurry. The office was quieter now, most of her colleagues having trickled out for lunch, their chatter about the Bahamas retreat still echoing in her mind. She pressed the phone to her ear, her voice steady as she answered. "Hello, Richard." "Clara." His voice was a jagged mix of panic and fury, like a man who just realized he was standing on a trap door. "What the hell did you do? What was that file you sent?" She leaned back in her chair, her expression calm, almost serene. "I'm not sure what you mean, Richard. I sent a file for review, like you always ask me to do. Did I miss something?" "Don't play dumb with me," he snapped, his voice rising. She could picture him in his corner office, his tie loosened, sweat beading on his forehead. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. That spreadsheet? Where did you even get it? You had no right to send it to her." Clara's lips twitched, but she kept her tone neutral. "I found it while organizing the server last quarter. It seemed important. I thought it was best to share it with someone who could make sense of it. Was that a mistake?" There was a long pause on the other end, the kind that felt like the air being sucked out of a room. When Richard spoke again, his voice was lower, almost a growl. "You have no idea what you've done, Clara. You need to fix this, now." "Fix what?" she asked, her voice dripping with innocence. "I was just doing my job, Richard. You always say I'm too focused on details. I thought you'd appreciate me taking initiative." "This isn't a game," he shouted, loud enough that she pulled the phone slightly away from her ear. "You sent that file to Vivian Caldwell. Vivian Caldwell. Do you have any idea who she is?" Clara did. Vivian Caldwell was the CEO of Pinnacle Marketing's biggest client, Triton Enterprises. A woman known for her razor-sharp intellect and zero tolerance for nonsense. The kind of person who could make or break a company like Pinnacle with a single phone call. Clara had met her once, at a gala last year, and had been struck by her quiet intensity, like a storm waiting to break. The business card Vivian had handed her that night was still tucked in Clara's desk drawer, its edges worn from the times she'd turned it over in her hands, wondering if she'd ever need it. "I thought she'd want to know," Clara said simply. "The numbers in that file didn't add up. I figured someone with her expertise should take a look." Richard let out a strangled sound, somewhere between a laugh and a curse. "You're done, Clara, you hear me? Done. I'm coming back to the office now, and you'd better have a damn good explanation, or I swear—" The line went dead. Clara set the phone down, her pulse steady. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. For 3 years, she'd played by Richard's rules, swallowing his condescension, his microaggressions, his endless demands. She'd watched him take credit for her campaigns, her ideas, her late-night revisions. She'd stayed silent when he'd passed her over for promotions, giving them to less experienced colleagues who knew how to flatter him. But this was the line. Excluding her from the retreat while sending interns to the Bahamas was the final straw. She glanced at her computer screen, where the sent email still lingered in her outbox. The file's contents flashed in her mind. Invoices with mismatched dates, payments funneled to a shell company, emails between Richard and an unknown contact discussing off-the-books deals. She hadn't understood all of it at first, but she'd pieced enough together to know it was trouble. Big trouble. The kind that could bring down a career or a company. Clara stood and stretched, her movements deliberate. She walked to the office kitchen, poured herself a coffee, and returned to her desk. The office was still mostly empty, but she could hear the faint hum of voices as her colleagues started trickling back in. She wondered how long it would take for the news to spread. An hour? A day? She didn't have to wait long. Her phone buzzed with a new email notification. It was from Vivian Caldwell herself, sent to Clara's personal email, not her work one. The subject was blank. The message was short. "Clara, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'd like to meet tomorrow morning to discuss further. Name a time and place." VC*V. Clara's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her composure. This was moving faster than she'd expected. She typed a quick reply, suggesting a cafe downtown at 9 a.m., and hit send. Then she leaned back, her mind racing through the possibilities. Vivian's response meant the file had hit its mark. But what would Richard do when he got back to the office? Would he try to fire her? Threaten her? Or worse? The elevator dinged, and Clara's head snapped up. Richard stormed out, his face red, his suit jacket slung over one arm. He made a beeline for her desk, ignoring the curious glances from the handful of colleagues who'd returned. "Clara," he barked, stopping just short of her cubicle. "My office. Now." She stood slowly, smoothing her blouse. "Of course, Richard," she said, her voice calm, but carrying an edge she hadn't used before. As she followed him, she caught Emily's wide-eyed stare from across the room. The intern looked like she'd just witnessed a car crash. Richard's office was a glass-walled shrine to his ego. Awards on the shelves, photos of him shaking hands with clients, a view of the city skyline that screamed success. He slammed the door behind them and rounded on her. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he spat. "You think you can just send a file like that and walk away clean?" Clara met his gaze unflinching. "I don't know what you're so upset about," she said. "If the file's nothing, then there's no problem, right? But if it's something, well, that's not on me." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment she thought he might lunge across the desk, but instead he sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. "You don't understand what you've started," he muttered. "You have no idea." "Then tell me," Clara said, crossing her arms. "What's in that file that's got you so scared?" Richard's mouth opened, then closed. He looked like a man staring down the barrel of a gun, unsure if it was loaded. And in that moment, Clara knew she'd won the first round. Richard's office felt smaller now, the glass walls closing in as the silence stretched between them. Clara stood with her arms crossed, her posture relaxed, but her eyes sharp, waiting for him to speak. Richard's face was a mask of barely contained rage, his fingers drumming erratically on the desk. The man who'd always projected unshakable confidence looked like he was unraveling, thread by thread. "You want to know what's in that file?" he finally said, his voice low and strained. "You're in over your head, Clara. You think you found some smoking gun, but all you've done is light a match in a room full of gas. You don't even know who you're messing with." Clara tilted her head, unfazed. "Then enlighten me, Richard, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're the one who's scared." His eyes flashed, and for a moment she thought he might explode. But instead, he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "That file, it's not just about me. It's about Triton. It's about deals that keep this company afloat. You think Pinnacle got to where it is by playing by the rules? You think clients like Vivian Caldwell stick around because of your pretty PowerPoint slides? There are things you don't understand, things you're not supposed to know." Clara's mind raced, piecing together his words. The spreadsheet she'd sent to Vivian hadn't just been a record of shady transactions. It was a glimpse into something bigger, something systemic. Payments to a shell company, coded emails, dates that lined up with Triton's biggest contracts. She'd suspected Richard was skimming, maybe padding his own pockets, but this sounded like more, like a network, a machine she'd accidentally kicked into gear. "Then maybe you should have been more careful," she said coolly. "If those deals are so important, why leave a paper trail on the company server? Sloppy, Richard. Even for you." His fist slammed on the desk, making the awards on his shelf rattle. "You smug little—" He stopped himself, taking a deep breath. "You have no idea what's coming. Vivian's not your ally, Clara. She's a shark. You think she's going to thank you for this? She'll eat you alive just like she will me." Clara shrugged, her calm exterior belying the adrenaline coursing through her. "Maybe, but at least I'll have a front-row seat when she takes a bite out of you first." Richard's face twisted, but before he could respond, his phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted from anger to something closer to dread. He snatched it up, turning away from Clara as he answered. "Vivian," he said, his voice suddenly smooth, almost groveling. "I was just about to call you." Clara couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she didn't need to. Richard's body language told her everything. The way his shoulders hunched, the way his free hand gripped the edge of the desk. He was scrambling, trying to spin a story, but the cracks were already showing. No, it's a misunderstanding," he said quickly. "I can explain everything. Let's meet. Yes, tomorrow, of course." As he hung up, Clara took a step toward the door. "Sounds like you've got a busy day ahead," she said, her tone light but cutting. "I'll leave you to it." "Don't you dare walk out of here," Richard snapped, pointing a finger at her. "You're not off the hook. You sent that file, and when this blows up, it's on you. You think you're untouchable? You're nothing without this job, Clara. Nothing." She paused in the doorway, turning just enough to meet his gaze. "Funny," she said. "That's exactly what I thought about you." She walked out, her heels clicking against the polished floor, ignoring the heat of his stare on her back. The office was busier now, her colleagues huddled in small groups, their whispers dying as she passed. Word was spreading. They didn't know the details, not yet, but they could sense something was wrong. Emily, the new hire, shot her a nervous glance, clutching her coffee mug like a shield. Clara gave her a small nod, her expression unreadable, and returned to her desk. Her computer screen was still open to her email, Vivian's message staring back at her. The meeting tomorrow morning at the cafe felt like a chess move, one she hadn't fully anticipated. Vivian wasn't just a client. She was a power player, someone who could turn this entire situation to her advantage. Clara had sent the file to expose Richard, but now she wondered if she'd opened a Pandora's box. What did Vivian want from her? Gratitude? Loyalty? Or was Richard right? Was she just another pawn in a bigger game? Clara's fingers hovered over the keyboard as she considered her next move. She could dig deeper, cross-reference the spreadsheet with other files on the server, but that would take time she might not have. Richard was rattled, but he wasn't defeated. He'd try to cover his tracks, maybe even pin the blame on her. She needed leverage, something to keep him off balance. Her eyes drifted to the corner of her desk, where a small USB drive sat nestled among her pens. It was a habit she'd picked up early in her career, backing up everything. Every email, every report, every late-night revision. Somewhere on that drive were copies of the files she'd sent to Vivian, and maybe more. She plugged it in, her screen flickering as the drive loaded. A quick search brought up a folder labeled Triton Q4. Inside were documents she hadn't seen before, contracts, memos, even a draft email from Richard to an unknown recipient with the subject, Contingency Plan. Clara's pulse quickened. She opened the email, her eyes scanning the text. It was vague but damning, hinting at a fallback if things went south with Triton. There were no names, but the tone was clear. Richard was prepared to throw someone under the bus to save himself, and Clara had a sinking feeling she knew who that someone might be. She copied the folder to her personal cloud, then ejected the USB and slipped it into her pocket. Whatever happened tomorrow, she needed to be ready. Richard might think he could intimidate her, but he'd underestimated her for the last time. And Vivian? Clara wasn't sure where she stood, but she wasn't walking into that meeting blind. As the afternoon wore on, the office grew tense, like a storm cloud hanging low. Richard stayed holed up in his office, his door closed, his phone pressed to his ear. Clara worked quietly, her face a mask of focus, but her mind was elsewhere. She was already planning her next move, calculating the risks, the rewards, the fallout. By the time she left the office that evening, the sun had dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows across the city. She stepped into the cool air, her breath visible in the dusk, and felt a strange sense of clarity. She'd started this, and there was no going back. Tomorrow, at the cafe, she'd find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. The cafe was tucked into a quiet corner of downtown, its windows fogged with early morning condensation. Clara arrived 10 minutes early, her breath catching in the crisp air as she scanned the room. The place was half empty, just a few bleary-eyed patrons nursing coffees and scrolling through their phones. She chose a table near the back, away from the door, with a clear view of the entrance. Her laptop bag sat at her feet, the USB drive heavy in her pocket. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying Richard's panicked call, Vivian's cryptic email, and the contents of that Triton Q4 folder. Whatever happened today, she was ready. Or at least, she hoped she was. Vivian Caldwell walked in at exactly 9 a.m., her presence commanding the room without effort. She was tall, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun, her tailored coat screaming understated power. Her eyes found Clara immediately, and she crossed the cafe with the confidence of someone who always knew exactly where they stood. "Clara," she said, her voice smooth but firm as she extended a hand. "Thank you for meeting me." Clara shook her hand, noting the strength in her grip. "Ms. Caldwell," she said, keeping her tone professional. "Thanks for reaching out." "Call me Vivian," she said, sliding into the seat across from Clara. She didn't bother with small talk, pulling a tablet from her bag and tapping the screen. "Let's get to it. That file you sent me, it's caused quite a stir." Clara's heart thudded, but she kept her face neutral. "I figured it might. The numbers didn't add up. I thought you should know." Vivian's lips curved into a faint smile, but it wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile that made you feel like you were being sized up. "You're thorough," she said. "Most people wouldn't have noticed. Or if they did, they wouldn't have had the guts to act on it. Why did you?" Clara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I've been at Pinnacle for 3 years. I've seen how things work, how certain people get rewarded while others are overlooked. When I found that file, it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about what they meant. Someone's been playing games with your company's money, Vivian. I thought you deserved to know before it went any further." Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly, studying Clara like a puzzle she was trying to solve. "And Richard? What's your angle with him? This wasn't just about doing the right thing, was it?" Clara's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. "Richard made it personal," she said simply. "He told me I didn't deserve a vacation, then sent the entire office on a trip, everyone but me. I've been carrying his weight for years, fixing his mistakes, covering his tracks. I'm done being invisible." Vivian leaned back, her expression unreadable. "So this was revenge." "Not revenge," Clara corrected. "Accountability. If Richard's been cutting corners with Triton's accounts, that's on him. I just turned on the light." Vivian tapped her tablet again, pulling up a spreadsheet that Clara recognized instantly. The file she'd sent. "These transactions," Vivian said, pointing to a column of numbers. "They're tied to a shell company called Nexus Holdings. Payments funneled through it, backdated to look like legitimate expenses. It's clever, but not clever enough. I had my team dig into it last night. Nexus doesn't exist. Not really. It's a front." Clara's pulse quickened. She'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed sent a chill down her spine. "A front for what?" Vivian's smile faded. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. Richard's not smart enough to pull this off alone. Someone else is involved. Someone with enough pull to keep it quiet. But you've opened the door, Clara, and now I need your help to walk through it." Clara blinked, caught off guard. "My help? I'm just a mid-level analyst. I don't have access to—" "You have more than you think," Vivian interrupted. "You found this file, didn't you? You've been in the trenches at Pinnacle, cleaning up their messes. You know where the bodies are buried, even if you don't realize it yet. I need someone on the inside. Someone I can trust." Clara's mind raced. Trust? She barely knew Vivian, and the woman's reputation suggested she didn't hand out trust lightly. This was a test, a calculated move. Vivian wasn't just here to thank her, she was recruiting her. But for what? To take down Richard? Or to dig deeper into something that might be bigger than both of them? What exactly are you asking me to do? Clara said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling in her chest. Vivian slid a flash drive across the table. This has a program that can access Pinnacle's server remotely. It's encrypted, untraceable. I need you to install it on your work computer and pull everything you can find related to Nexus Holdings. Emails, contracts, payment records, anything that might point to who's behind this. You do that, and I'll make sure you're protected. Clara stared at the flash drive, her fingers itching to pick it up, but her instincts screaming caution. Protected from what? Richard? Or someone else? Vivian's eyes darkened. Let's just say this goes higher than Richard. If you're in, you need to be all in. No half measures. Clara's thoughts flashed to the office, to Richard's panicked face, to the Triton Q4 folder on her USB. She'd already crossed a line by sending that file. Backing out now would mean leaving herself exposed, with Richard gunning for her and no one to back her up. But agreeing to Vivian's plan meant diving headfirst into something she didn't fully understand. A shell company, coded emails, a contingency plan. How deep did this go? She reached for the flash drive, her fingers closing around it. I'm in, she said, her voice firm, but I want something in return. Vivian raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Name it. When this is over, I want out of Pinnacle, Clara said. A clean exit, with a recommendation from you. And if there's a payout for exposing this, I want my share. Vivian's smile returned, sharper this time. Done. But be careful, Clara. You're playing a dangerous game now. The meeting ended shortly after, Vivian leaving with a promise to follow up once Clara had something concrete. As Clara watched her go, the flash drive felt like a lead weight in her hand. She paid for her coffee and stepped back into the morning chill, her mind already mapping out her next steps. She'd need to get back to the office before Richard started digging through the server himself. If he found out what she was doing, he'd do more than fire her, he'd bury her. Back at Pinnacle, the office was eerily quiet, the usual buzz replaced by a tense undercurrent. Richard's door was still closed, but Clara could see him through the glass, pacing as he spoke on the phone. She slid into her cubicle, her movements deliberate, and plugged Vivian's flash drive into her computer. The program loaded quickly, a sleek interface that looked far too sophisticated for a simple data pull. Whatever Vivian's team had built, it was serious. Clara's fingers flew across the keyboard, searching for anything tied to Nexus Holdings. Files began to download, emails, invoices, even encrypted documents she didn't have the clearance to access. Her heart pounded as she watched the progress bar creep forward. She was crossing another line, one there was no coming back from. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop what you're doing. You're making a mistake. Clara froze, her eyes locked on the screen. The office felt colder, the hum of the air conditioning louder. She glanced around, but no one was watching. Or were they? Clara's fingers hovered over the keyboard, the anonymous text burning in her mind. Stop what you're doing. You're making a mistake. Her eyes darted around the office, searching for any sign she was being watched. The hum of the air conditioning felt oppressive, the fluorescent lights too bright. Her colleagues were at their desks, heads down, but the air was thick with unspoken tension. Richard's office door was still closed, his silhouette visible through the glass as he paced, phone pressed to his ear. She glanced back at her screen, where Vivian's program was still pulling files from Pinnacle's server. The progress bar was at 85%, downloading documents tied to Nexus Holdings, emails, contracts, and something labeled contingency protocols. Her instincts screamed to stop, to unplug the flash drive and walk away, but she was too deep now. The text could be a bluff, Richard trying to scare her. Or it could be someone else, someone higher up, someone who knew what she was doing. Clara took a deep breath and typed a reply to the unknown number. Who is this? She hit send, then turned her phone face down, forcing herself to focus. The program finished downloading, and a folder popped up on her screen, packed with files. She opened one at random, an email chain between Richard and a contact listed only as K. The subject was Nexus Transfer Q3. The language was coded, full of phrases like secure the pipeline and minimize exposure. But one line stood out. If Triton pulls out, we're all burned. Move the funds before she notices. She had to be Vivian. Clara's stomach churned as she opened another file, a ledger showing payments from Triton to Nexus Holdings, then funneled to an offshore account. The amounts were staggering, millions, siphoned off over years. Richard wasn't just skimming. He was part of a scheme that could bring down Pinnacle and Triton both. And Kay? That had to be the real puppet master, someone pulling Richard's strings. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. You were warned. Check your email. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She opened her work email, her hands trembling slightly. There was a new message, no subject, from an address she didn't recognize. It contained a single attachment, a photo of her, taken this morning, leaving the cafe after meeting Vivian. Below it, a message. Back off, or this gets worse. Clara's blood ran cold. Someone had been following her. She glanced at Richard's office, but he was still on the phone, oblivious. This wasn't him. This was Kay, or someone working for them. She forwarded the email to her personal account, then deleted it from her work inbox, her mind racing. She couldn't stop now. She was too close. But she needed to be smarter. She copied the downloaded files to her personal cloud, then wiped Vivian's flash drive, ejecting it and slipping it into her pocket. She stood, grabbing her bag, and headed for the door. She'd work from home, somewhere safer, where she could sort through the files without eyes on her. But as she reached the elevator, Richard's voice cut through the office. "Clara!" he bellowed, storming out of his office. His tie was gone, his shirt untucked, his face a mix of fury and desperation. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" She turned, her expression calm despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Home," she said. "I'm not feeling well." "You're not going anywhere," he snarled, closing the distance between them. The office went silent, every eye on them. "You think you can just waltz out after what you've done? I know you're working with Vivian. You're trying to ruin me." Clara raised an eyebrow, her voice steady. "Ruin you? Richard, I just sent a file. If that's enough to ruin you, maybe you should ask yourself why." His face reddened, and for a moment, she thought he might grab her. But then his phone rang, shrill and insistent. He glanced at the screen, and his anger dissolved into panic. "This isn't over," he muttered, turning away to answer it. "Vivian, wait." Clara didn't wait to hear the rest. She stepped into the elevator, the doors closing as Richard's voice faded. Back in her apartment, she locked the door, drew the curtains, and opened her laptop. The files from Pinnacle's server were a goldmine. She spent hours cross-referencing them, piecing together the puzzle. Nexus Holdings was a front for laundering money, with Richard as the fall guy. Kay was mentioned in a few emails, always with deference, but never named. One document, buried in the contingency protocols, listed a meeting scheduled for tonight at a warehouse, an address included. Clara knew what she had to do. She forwarded the files to Vivian, along with a message. "Check the warehouse tonight. It's bigger than Richard." Then she called a cab, her hands steady as she tucked the USB drive into her pocket. She wasn't trust the police, not yet, but she trusted Vivian to act. The warehouse was on the outskirts, a hulking shadow under the night sky. Clara stayed in the cab, watching from a distance as cars arrived. She recognized one, Vivian's sleek sedan. Then another, a nondescript van, and finally, Richard's limousine. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Stay put, we're handling it." Moments later, lights flooded the lot, and federal agents swarmed, their voices sharp as they shouted orders. Richard was dragged out in cuffs, his face ashen. Another man, older, was pulled from the van. Kay, she assumed. Clara exhaled, sinking back in the seat. It was over. Or almost. The next morning, Vivian called. "You did good," she said. "Richard's done, and we've got enough to take down the network. You'll get your exit, your recommendation, and a bonus. But I'd lay low for a while." Clara agreed. She quit Pinnacle that day. Her desk cleared out before lunch. The office was abuzz with rumors. Richard's arrest, the canceled retreat, the feds raiding the server. Emily asked where she was going, but Clara just smiled. "Somewhere I deserve," she said. A month later, she was on a beach, not the Bahamas, but close enough, sipping a cocktail, her laptop closed for once. The bonus had been generous, and Vivian's recommendation had opened doors. She'd exposed a multi-million-dollar scheme, and though Kay was still a mystery, Richard was facing years behind bars. Clara raised her glass to the horizon, a quiet toast to the file that had changed everything. She'd been invisible once, but now,